never thought my heart would betray me like this. I fell for my 20-year-old stepson. Lord, help me. I let him take me to places I'd never been before, body and soul. I thought it was love, but it turned out to be the cruelest trap a woman like me could ever fall into. My name is Eleanor Hayes. I'm 83 years old now, sitting here on my front porch in Willow Creek, Oregon, where the tall Douglas firs stand like silent guardians, keeping watch over our secrets. To anyone passing by on Maple Street, I'm just another old widow with too many cats and a garden that somehow still wins blue ribbons at the county fair. The mailman waves every morning. The preacher's wife drops off casseroles when she thinks I look too thin. The children next door call me Grandma Ellie, like I was born to be everyone's sweet grandmother. They see the white hair pinned neatly, the Sunday dresses pressed crisp my hands that tremble just a little when I pour sweet tea on afternoons like this one. But this little town has always had its shadows. The fog rolls in thick enough to hide things that shouldn't be seen. Timber trucks pass by, carrying logs heavy as the secrets in people's hearts. Church bells ring every Sunday, calling folks to worship and forgiveness. But some sins are too heavy, even for those old wooden pews to carry. The air here smells of pine needles and coffee from Mabel's Diner, where old men gather to solve the world's problems over biscuits and gravy, never knowing that one of their neighbors has been carrying a shame heavier than the winter snow. And tonight, I'm ready to tell you the truth, because carrying this secret has worn me down to almost nothing. What started as grief and loneliness twisted into something so shameful. I've been afraid to even whisper it in my prayers, though I know God saw it all anyway. Before I take my last breath, I need someone to hear this story, because silence, my friends, has been killing me slower than old age ever could. What you're about to hear will make you question everything you think you know about love, family, and how far a lonely heart can fall when it's desperate. And I'm asking you, stay with me through it all, even when it gets ugly, even when you want to turn away. Because sometimes the only way out of hell is to walk straight through it. When my husband Samuel died one snowy Tuesday morning in February, I thought God himself was weeping with me. He slipped away so peacefully in his sleep after 37 years of marriage, leaving me with nothing but memories echoing in every corner of this old house. We never had children together. The Lord never blessed us that way. But Samuel had a boy from his first marriage, Jasper. I hadn't seen him since he was 14, awkward and bitter, taken away by his mother after the divorce. And yet, months after the funeral, when I was drowning in silence and grief, Jasper appeared on my doorstep. He was 20 then, taller now with his father's build, but his mother's sharp cheekbones. His eyes were red from crying when he said, "I know we don't really know each other, Eleanor, but maybe I could stay a few days. Help out around here." Daddy always said, "You were the best thing that ever happened to him." I should have listened to that little warning voice inside me. But grief makes fools of us all. It makes you reach for comfort wherever you find it. And Jasper had a way of looking at me, the same way his father once did, like I was the only person in the world who mattered. That very night, he moved into the spare room. And I won't lie to you, it felt good to hear footsteps in the hallway again, to cook for someone besides myself, to have a reason to change out of my nightgown before noon. He chopped wood, fixed the squeaky doors, read aloud from Samuel's old Western novels in the evenings. But there was something else too. Something I was too ashamed to admit, even to myself at first. If you're watching this video, let me know where you are by leaving a comment. I'd love to know where in the world the Love and Tears channel story has reached you. And if this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next stories. Stories that can make your heart ache and flutter. The way he brushed his hand across my shoulders when he brought me my morning coffee. The way he sat just a little too close on the couch, close enough that I could smell his soap, feel the warmth radiating from his skin. And the way his eyes lingered on me, like he was seeing something I didn't even realize I was showing. I told myself it was just loneliness, that I was imagining things. But late at night, lying in that big empty bed, my mind betrayed me. At 83 years old, I thought those kinds of feelings had long since dried up, scattered like autumn leaves. And yet, I caught myself thinking about Jasper in ways that made my face burn with shame. 3 weeks after he moved in, I was washing dishes after supper when he came up behind me. Quietly, his hands rested on my waist, steady and warm. "You don't have to be alone anymore, Eleanor," he whispered against my ear. And in that moment, something inside me caught fire. Something I thought had died with Samuel. I should have stepped away. Should have told him to leave. Should have remembered that I was old enough to be his grandmother. That he was my late husband's son. That what we were teetering on was wrong in ways I couldn't even name. But instead, I leaned back. I let myself fall into something dark and hungry that I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. And that was the beginning of everything unraveling. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd stumbled through a fever dream. My heart still racing from the memory of Jasper's breath against my neck, his hands on my waist. I lay there in Samuel's old bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, shaped like a map to nowhere, trying to convince myself it was nothing more than two lonely people reaching for comfort. But when I went downstairs there, he was standing at the stove making pancakes as if nothing had happened. Wearing one of Samuel's old flannel shirts, too big for him, the sleeves rolled up. He looked up at me, gave me a smile that made my stomach flip, like I was 16 again. "Morning, beautiful," he said. And the way he said it wasn't the way you'd speak to an old woman. It was the way a man speaks to a woman he wants. And Lord help me. It had been so long since anyone looked at me that way I felt myself bloom under it like a flower starved for sunlight. In the days that followed, we danced around each other like people afraid of touching a live wire. But the current was there every time we passed in the hallway, every time our hands brushed over the dinner table. He found excuses to be close, steadying my elbow on the porch steps, lingering a second too long when handing me my coffee, brushing past me in the kitchen. And God forgive me, I found excuses too. Smoothing down his collar when he came in from chopping wood, standing close when he showed me how to use the new coffee maker he'd bought. The whole house felt charged alive with something dangerous and sweet. Even our little town of Willow Creek seemed brighter, warmer, like winter itself had loosened its grip. Sometimes he'd drive me into town to Mabel's diner. He'd hold doors open for me, treating me like I was something precious. One afternoon, we were sitting in my living room. He was reading to me from one of Samuel's old Western novels while snow piled against the windows. I was mending his shirt needle, steady in my hand, when he suddenly lowered the book and said, "You know what I love about you, Eleanor? You don't treat me like a kid. You actually listen. Like what I say matters." My hand stilled on the fabric. I swallowed hard. "Well, you're not a kid," I said softly. "You're a grown man with your own thoughts and feelings." He set the book down and looked at me. His eyes so much like Samuel's, only darker, hungrier. Nobody's ever made me feel like that before, he whispered. Not my mama. Not the girls my age who just laugh about nothing. You make me feel like I could be somebody important. And right there, I felt myself breaking in ways I never thought I could. Hey, if you're watching this, I want to ask, do you think Eleanor should stop here, or would you forgive her for being so lonely? Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're new to Love and Tears, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this story is just beginning. The way he was looking at me made heat rise in my cheeks. I bent over my sewing, focusing hard on threading the needle just to keep my hands from shaking. "Your daddy was important," I whispered. "You've got his blood in you. That makes you important too. I don't want to talk about him right now," Jasper said, his voice edged with something sharp. It startled me enough to look up. But when our eyes met, the sharpness melted and his expression softened. He reached forward, gently taking the shirt right out of my hands. "I want to talk about you," he said, his voice low. "About how you make me feel." Before I could stop him, he slid off the couch and knelt down beside my rocking chair, his strong young hands wrapping around my weathered ones. "Eleanor, I know this is crazy. I know people wouldn't understand. But being here with you, taking care of you, it feels right in a way nothing else in my life ever has." My heart was pounding so fast, I thought it might give out right there in Samuel's old chair. "Jasper, honey," I said softly, "you're grieving your daddy. And I'm just an old woman who's been kind to you. That's all this is." "You're not old," he cut in fiercely, lifting my hands to his lips. He pressed soft kisses across my knuckles, sending fire through me. "You're beautiful, alive in ways those young girls don't even understand yet. When I look at you, I see a woman who knows what she wants. Someone who isn't afraid of real feelings." I should have pulled away. Should have scolded him for foolishness, sent him upstairs to think about the words tumbling from his mouth. But instead, I reached out. My thumb brushed his cheek. His skin was smooth where Samuel's had been rough. My breath caught in my throat. "You don't know what you're asking for," I whispered. "Yes, I do," he answered, his eyes burning into mine. And then he leaned closer. I smelled him soap, wood smoke, and something else, something purely male that made my head spin. When his lips touched mine, it was gentle at first, almost hesitant, like he feared I might break. But I didn't break. I kissed him back. And with that, A hunger I thought had long since died, roared back to life. When we pulled apart breathless, I saw my own shock mirrored in his eyes. But behind it, there was something else, satisfaction. Like he had solved a puzzle he'd been piecing together for years. "There," he murmured, resting his forehead against mine. "Now you know, I'm not confused about anything." That night we pretended. We ate dinner, we said goodnight like nothing had changed. But lying in my bed, listening to him moving around in the next room, I knew everything had. For the first time since Samuel died, I didn't feel like I was drowning in loneliness. For the first time in months, I felt alive. But that feeling, that dangerous, intoxicating aliveness, was about to cost me everything. After that kiss in the living room, we both tried to pretend. But pretending is like trying to hold back a river with your bare hands. Eventually, the current breaks through. Jasper began leaving me little gifts. Nothing grand. Wildflowers from the woods. A smooth stone from the creek. He'd slip them onto my nightstand or tuck them into the worn pages of my Bible. Each time my heart fluttered like a schoolgirl's, like I was finding secret love notes. The weather turned warm unexpectedly, one of those false springs Oregon sometimes gifts in February. The snow melted, the air smelled of mud and new growth and possibility. Jasper suggested evening walks, at first, just around the block. He'd offer me his arm when the sidewalk was slick and I leaned on him more than I truly needed to. Mrs. Henderson, 3 doors down, waved from her kitchen window. I waved back, knowing she was probably already on the phone with her sister gossiping about what Samuel's stepson was still doing in the widow Hayes' house. But I didn't care. For the first time since Samuel passed, I woke each morning with something to look forward to. Jasper in the kitchen, humming some tune under his breath while he made the coffee. And my heart, traitorous, reckless, kept choosing him over the silence. When Daniel smiled at me over his cup of tea, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Beautiful. Not just tolerated the way the other church ladies made me feel, but truly seen, truly wanted. Our walks grew longer each day, stretching beyond the neighborhood and winding through the old logging roads behind town. Daniel seemed to know every corner of those woods. He could point out deer trails or tell me where the best wild berries would bloom in summer. One afternoon, he led me to a small clearing where someone long ago had built a lean-to shelter. It was nothing fancy, just wood and nails, but it was private, peaceful. The sound of the creek rushing nearby filled the air, and we sat together on an old fallen log that served as a bench. That's when Daniel began to share his story, how his mother poisoned him against his father, telling him Samuel had abandoned them, when in truth, Samuel had fought desperately for visitation rights. But she had blocked him again and again. The pain in his voice made me ache. The loneliness of a boy growing up believing his father never wanted him. And somehow in that moment, I told him about my own loneliness, the ache of never becoming a mother, how Samuel and I had tried for years until we finally accepted that some dreams were not meant to come true. I broke down crying, remembering how badly Samuel had wanted to be a father to Daniel. That boy pulled me close, letting me sob against his chest until his shirt was damp with my tears. His hand stroked my hair so gently, so patiently, that I felt something shift inside me. A wall I had built long ago began to crumble. When I finally lifted my head, his face was so close, I could see the golden flecks in his brown eyes. And when he kissed me, I didn't pull away. This time I kissed him back. It was different now. Hungrier, more desperate. His hands moved from my hair to my face to my shoulders, and I could feel the heat radiating off him like firewood glowing in a stove. When he pulled back, we were both breathless. And in his expression, I saw not only desire, but something else, something that looked like relief, maybe even triumph, as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. The walk home was quiet, but every time our hands brushed, sparks leapt through me. By the time we sat down to dinner, I could hardly breathe. Daniel looked calm enough, talking about maybe planting a spring garden. But I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. The intensity of his gaze made my stomach flip. That night, lying in bed, I listened to him moving about in the next room. I wondered what it would feel like to have those strong young hands on more than just my shoulders. The thought made me blush ashamed and excited all at once, like I was 17 again instead of 83. Then I heard the slow creak of my bedroom door opening. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. But there he was, Daniel, tall and lean, silhouetted in the moonlight, standing at my door, in nothing but pajama pants. My heart pounded so loud, I was certain he could hear it. He didn't speak, just stood there, watching me. And then slowly, he crossed the room and sat down on the edge of my bed. The mattress dipped under his weight. When his hand touched my cheek so softly, I thought, I imagined it. I didn't pull away. He leaned down and kissed my forehead as if I were fragile precious. Then he whispered. He couldn't sleep, couldn't stop thinking about me, couldn't stand being so close yet so far. Would I mind if he just lay beside me? Every reasonable part of me screamed that this was wrong, that I should send him back before we crossed a line we could never uncross. But loneliness has a power stronger than reason. I pulled back the quilt and made room for him. He slid in carefully, keeping his distance. But just his presence beside me filled a hollow space inside I hadn't known was still there. We didn't do anything that first night. Just lay in the dark, our hands finding each other like teenagers fumbling toward a secret. But I knew. We were standing on the edge of something that would change everything forever. The next mornings, Daniel was always back in his own room before dawn. At breakfast, we pretended nothing had happened. But with every glance, every brush of his hand under the covers at night, the air between us grew hotter, heavier, until on the fourth night, when he slipped into my room, I was already waiting for him. And when the moonlight fell across his face, I didn't see just loneliness anymore. I saw hunger, the kind of longing that makes a person cross lines they once thought were unshakable. That's what lived inside me. When Ethan sat down on the bed beside me, I reached for him first. My hands, these old trembling hands, found the warmth of his chest beneath his half-open shirt. He let out a sound low and raw, a mix of surprise and relief, like he'd been holding his breath for days, waiting for me to give him permission. Maybe I had been making him wait, clinging to the last threads of propriety, while my body screamed for his touch. What happened next still makes me blush, even now. Ethan's hands were gentle, almost reverent, tracing every fragile line of my body, as though I wasn't a woman weathered by time, but something rare and precious. He kissed me everywhere, whispering how beautiful I was, how long he had wanted this, how right it felt to finally be with me. And Lord, it did feel right. Every touch lit a fire in veins I thought had long since cooled. When he moved over me, his young body covering mine, it was as though all the color had returned to a world that had been gray and empty since my husband Samuel passed. The way Ethan looked at me, the way he said my name like a prayer, it made me forget everything else. The scandal, the whispers, the age difference. Afterwards, we lay tangled in lavender-scented sheets surrounded by shadows and secrets. Ethan's head rested on my chest as my fingers combed through his hair. I should have felt guilty for bringing another man into Samuel's bed. But instead I felt alive again, like I had finally woken from years of sleepwalking. Then Ethan lifted his haired eyes, glowing in the moonlight, and told me he loved me. Not like a stepson, not like a friend, but like a man who wanted me, truly wanted me for life. He said he had been falling for me since the very first day. That my strength, my kindness, the way I made him feel like he mattered, it had captured him. I should have pushed him away, reminded him that this kind of love would only lead to ruin. But instead I whispered the words back. And I meant them. For the first time in years, I believed love could conquer anything. But even as I was falling deeper under his spell, some small part of me noticed things that didn't quite fit. The way his eyes sometimes went cold when he thought I wasn't watching. The way he steered conversations away whenever I asked about his past. How he never seemed to have money, yet somehow always had enough cash when he needed it. And then, one quiet afternoon, just a week after we had first crossed that forbidden line, I found something that shattered everything. I was cleaning out Samuel's old desk, preparing to donate his papers to the church, when I uncovered a letter hidden behind dusty tax returns. It was from the Oregon Department of Corrections, dated just 2 months before Samuel's death, addressed to him regarding his son, Ethan Walker. The subject line froze me in place. Notification of early release. Fraud. Conviction. My hands shook so badly I could barely read. But the words were enough to turn my stomach to stone. Ethan had been imprisoned for fraud. His crime scamming elderly women, romancing them, earning their trust, then stealing their savings. He had been released just 6 weeks before showing up at my door. I sat there in Samuel's old chair, clutching the letter, the air around me spinning. Every tender moment, every kiss, every whispered declaration suddenly looked different. Poisoned by the possibility of lies. Had Ethan known Samuel was dying? Had he been waiting, circling like a vulture until I was alone and vulnerable? But even with that letter burning in my hands, I couldn't make myself fully believe it. How could the man who touched me so gently, who spoke to me like I was his world, be the same heartless criminal described in that cold official document? If you're watching this video, I want to ask, do you believe in blind love? Or do you think it is just a trap? Leave your opinion in the comment section below. And if this is your first time visiting the Love and Tears channel, don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. There had to be an explanation. Some mistake, some cruel coincidence. That night when Jasper slipped into my bed like he had every night that week, I said nothing about the letter. I just held him closer, searching his face in the moonlight for the truth. If he was lying to me, surely I'd see it in his eyes. But no, he was tender, desperate, almost as though he needed me as much as I needed him. By morning, I had almost convinced myself I was overreacting. That maybe the letter was about another man with the same name. That Jasper couldn't possibly be the kind of man who preyed on lonely women. He couldn't be. Not my Jasper, but I was wrong. Terribly, dangerously wrong. And by the time the truth finally revealed itself, it was too late. The trap had already been sprung, and I had walked into it willingly, with my eyes wide open. After that letter, nothing felt the same. Even as I tried to forget it, to bury it deep in Samuel's desk drawer, the words haunted me. Each morning, I'd wake up in Jasper's arms, feeling like the luckiest woman alive, only to remember the paper hidden away and feel sick to my stomach. It was like living in two worlds at once. In one, I was a woman rediscovering passion and love beyond her wildest dreams. In the other, I was just another victim in an elaborate con. The doubt ate at me like poison. When Jasper brought me coffee in bed and kissed my forehead, I couldn't help but wonder if he was silently calculating how much longer he needed to keep me hooked. When he wrapped his arm around me on our walks, whispering that I was his whole world, I studied his face for cracks, any flicker of deception. But there were none. He was too good, too perfect, and maybe that was the most terrifying part. Even knowing what I knew or thought I knew, I couldn't resist him. His touch, his voice in the dark, the way he knew exactly how to unravel me with his hands. It was intoxicating. My body was his instrument, and he played it like he had rehearsed every note. But the cracks began to show in small, unsettling ways. Little things I had ignored while drowning in his charm. Like how he never seemed to have money, yet always brought me gifts, flowers, from the florist, a bottle of wine, a silk scarf he swore matched the color of my eyes. When I asked where the money came from, he'd only smile, say he'd saved from odd jobs. But I never saw him working anywhere in Fossil. Not once. And then there was his past. He hated talking about it. When Mrs. Henderson dropped by one afternoon with a casserole and asked him the usual neighborly questions, where he was from, what kind of work he did, if he planned to stay long, Jasper's body went rigid. His smile never faltered, but his answers were slippery, vague, like smoke you couldn't catch. That night, I tried to ask again, gently, lovingly. I told him he didn't need to hide from me, that I wanted to know everything about the man I was falling for. But instead of answering, he pulled me into his arms, kissing me, until my knees gave out, and every question in my throat turned to ash. And it kept happening. Each time I got close to the truth, Jasper silenced me with passion. I thought it meant he was living for the moment, that he didn't want the past to ruin the present. But now, I see it for what it really was: calculated distraction. 10 days after finding the letter, I overheard something that made the blood run cold in my veins. I was at Miller's Market picking up groceries when Doris Hartwell was chatting with the butcher. She was gossiping about strange cars seen parked near the old logging road at night. Drug dealers, maybe, or teenagers sneaking off to drink. But when she described the vehicle, a dark blue sedan with out-of-state plates, I felt my stomach knot. Because I had seen that car, parked down the road, always at odd hours, always watching. That night I couldn't sleep. Jasper's arm was draped across my waist, his breath steady and soft, as though nothing in the world could disturb him. But I lay there, wide awake, staring into the dark. At 3 a.m., I slipped from the bed and crept to the window overlooking the road. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it might wake him. And when I pulled back the curtain, the moonlight was so bright that night it painted everything silver. From my bedroom window, I could see the driveway as clear as day. And then my breath caught in my throat. Just 100 yards down the road, half hidden in the shadows, sat a car. Silent, motionless, watching. I stayed there for nearly an hour, staring, waiting for it to move. But it didn't. It just sat there like a predator, biding its time. Finally exhausted, I slipped back into bed. Jasper stirred his voice, thick with sleep, as he whispered, "Are you okay?" I forced a smile and lied, told him I'd only gotten up for a glass of water. But in the dark, I could feel his eyes on me. Not tender, not loving, but sharp, calculating, and it made my skin crawl. The next morning, I came up with an excuse, told him I needed to visit Sarah Mackenzie, an old friend on the far side of town. I wanted to see how he'd react. Would he insist on coming with me, or prefer to stay behind? Jasper smiled and said he wanted to fix the loose boards on the back steps. A perfect answer. Too perfect. Driving to Sarah's, my mind was racing. Sarah and I had been friends for over 40 years. She knew me before Samuel, before all of this. The moment she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't even need to ask. Over coffee and store-bought cookies, the truth started spilling out of me. I told her about Jasper. Not everything, of course, but enough. Enough to let her know I was drowning in doubts I couldn't shake. Sarah just sat quietly, listening the way only an old friend can. When I finally stopped talking, she reached across the table and squeezed my hands. Her words chilled me. People in town had been whispering. Not in a cruel way. Most thought I was simply being kind to Samuel's boy. But some found it strange. A young man staying with a widow woman for so long. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. Her nephew worked at the sheriff's department, and apparently they'd been getting inquiries requests for background checks. Not from locals, but from private investigators or lawyers. Think about that for a moment. Someone somewhere was digging. I drove home with my heart pounding, praying it was all just a coincidence. But when I pulled into the driveway, the back steps looked exactly the same. Not a single board had been touched. Jasper had lied. That night, he came to me with a passion that felt different, urgent, almost desperate, as if he was trying to brand himself onto me, to etch himself into my memory. And when he whispered that he never wanted to live without me, it didn't sound like devotion, it sounded like a goodbye I couldn't understand yet. Over the next few days, Jasper became almost too attentive. Breakfast in bed, warm baths, constant touches, constant declarations of love. It should have felt like heaven, but it felt like a trick. Like a magician dazzling me with one hand while the other slipped into my pocket. So I started watching him. Really watching him. The way he'd vanish for hours, claiming he was walking in the woods. The way he'd step out onto the porch for phone calls, lowering his voice so I couldn't hear. And then one morning, I caught him. I pretended to nap while he brought me coffee. Through half-closed eyes, I watched as he quietly opened my purse. His hands were steady, practiced. He looked through my checkbook, my credit cards, every slip of paper. Then just as carefully, he put everything back exactly where it had been. That was the moment I knew. Jasper wasn't just curious. He was cataloging me, studying my accounts, counting every cent Samuel had left me. My inheritance wasn't enough to make me rich in the city, but here in Fossil it was more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days. Enough to make me a target. And yet, even knowing all of that, I couldn't confront him. Not yet. Because a part of me, God help me, still wanted to believe I was wrong. What do you think if you were in this situation? Would you have the courage to face Jasper? Leave a comment to let me know. And if this is your first time visiting the Love and Tears channel, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this traumatic story. That night, lying awake beside him, I kept asking myself the same question. How could the man who held me so tenderly, the man who whispered love into my ear, be the same person who once went to prison for fraud? Part of me refused to believe it. And another part was simply terrified. Terrified of being alone again, terrified of admitting I had been such a fool. And most of all, terrified of what Jasper might do if he realized I had begun to see through him. That fear grew into something darker the day I found the gun. I had been doing laundry a chore. Jasper usually insisted on handling himself. But since he had gone into town for supplies, I decided to take over. When I lifted his duffel bag to check the pockets before washing his jeans, I felt something heavy at the bottom, wrapped inside a t-shirt. My hands shook as I unwrapped it, but there was no mistaking what I was holding: a small black pistol, the kind that looked cold and final. The serial numbers had been filed off. I stood in the laundry room, staring at that weapon, and it felt like my entire world had tilted off its axis. Why would Jasper need a gun? What was he planning to do with it? Every answer my mind gave me led to the same horrifying conclusion. I wasn't just being conned. I was in real danger. I wrapped the gun back up and placed it exactly where I found it. But my hands didn't stop trembling all day. Later, Jasper came home with groceries and a bouquet of daisies, kissing me like he'd been gone for weeks instead of hours. I excused myself to the bathroom and vomited. What had once felt like tenderness now looked like a mask, hiding something monstrous. That night, when he reached for me, I claimed I wasn't feeling well. He was gentle, even brought me tea with honey, and stayed at my bedside until I pretended to fall asleep. But I didn't close my eyes once. I just lay there, listening to his breathing in the dark, wondering if he was planning to use that gun on me. And then, as if fate wanted to test how much more I could endure, the next morning brought a new terror. I went out to check the mail and noticed a car parked across the street. Inside sat a woman maybe in her 50s, with graying hair and sharp eyes. Something about her felt familiar, and my stomach clenched. She stepped out of the car, her smile stiff, her eyes cold. "My name is Margaret Evans," she said. "I'm Jasper's mother. I drove here from Portland because I think you need to know exactly what kind of man you've let into your life." Standing on my front porch, I felt the world tilt again. Margaret wasn't just a stranger, she was Samuel's ex-wife. And the things she told me made my blood run cold. She said Jasper had been in trouble since he was a teenager, that he targeted lonely, older women like me. His last victim, she whispered, had been a widow in Eugene who lost her entire savings before her family stepped in. And then Margaret pulled out her phone. On the screen was a news article, Jasper's younger face staring back at me, beside the headline, "Local man arrested in elder fraud scheme." My knees nearly gave way. Margaret watched me, satisfaction flickering in her eyes as my world crumbled. She admitted she had investigators watching my house, building a case that would put Jasper away for good. But when I asked her why she cared about protecting me, her smile hardened into something cruel. "This isn't about you," she said coldly. "It's about Jasper paying for ruining my life. He's the reason Samuel left me. He's the reason everything fell apart." Her words felt like knives. And when she turned to leave, I knew I was standing in the center of a storm, one that was about to break wide open. What do you think? If you were in my situation, would you believe Margaret, or would you still side with Jasper? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this is your first time visiting Love and Tears, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapters of this dramatic story. Hearing Tom say those words, I felt like the ground vanished beneath me. Digitalis. Poison. Suddenly the gun I'd found wasn't even the most terrifying weapon in Jasper's arsenal. If Helen had died questioning him, what did that mean for me? Now that I'd started pulling at the same thread, I gripped the phone so tightly, my knuckles turned white. "Are you saying Jasper killed her?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Tom's pause said everything before his words did. "We can't prove it yet, but let's just say too many women around him end up with missing money or worse. That's why we need you, Mrs. Whitmore. You're the only one who's still close to him, the only one who can help us catch him before someone else gets hurt." Before I got hurt, when I hung up the phone, my reflection in the hallway mirror startled me. I looked pale, older, somehow, like the truth had stolen years from my face overnight. For the first time since Samuel's death, I wished desperately that he was still here, that his steady hands and calm voice could guide me through this nightmare. Instead, all I had was fear and a growing certainty that every kiss, every caress from Jasper was nothing more than a step toward my own destruction. That evening, Jasper came home, whistling, carrying takeout fried chicken. and a bottle of cheap champagne. He set the table like we were celebrating something, his smile as warm and easy as ever. But when his eyes lingered on me, too long, too steady, I wondered if he was already imagining how the headline would read when I was gone. "Ruth," he said softly, pouring me a glass. "I've been thinking we should make things official. Maybe put both our names on the house, on the accounts. That way, if anything ever happens to you, I can take care of things the way Samuel would have wanted." The champagne in my hand trembled. He was no longer testing me. He was tightening the noose. I forced a smile, my heart slamming in my chest. "Maybe we should talk about it later, when I'm feeling better." His hand brushed my cheek, tender as ever, but I felt the steel beneath it now. "Of course," he said. Later, but the look in his eyes told me he wasn't planning to wait much longer. The weight of Tom's words pressed down on me until I could hardly breathe. Dead within the week. That wasn't a warning, it was a countdown. I looked around Samuel's study at the worn books, the brass lamp, the photographs of a life that had once been safe, ordinary, even happy. And I thought, this is the room they'll find empty when I'm gone. For the first time, death felt close enough to touch. That evening, when Jasper came home, I caught myself staring at him with new eyes. Every gesture, every word was laced with menace now, whether he meant it to be or not. He set the groceries on the counter, humming some cheerful tune, but all I heard was the echo of Tom's voice. "He's going to kill you." And then, as if on cue, Jasper slipped his arm around my shoulders. "You know, Ruth," he murmured, "I've been thinking. Life is short. We shouldn't waste time. Maybe we ought to take that trip to Portland tomorrow after all." My heart gave a violent lurch. Portland. Again. The city wasn't just about the ring, it was about opportunity. A place where a woman could vanish without a trace. I forced a laugh, shaky and too thin. "Tomorrow, oh Jasper. I don't think I could manage such a long day. My joints have been so stiff lately. Maybe next week." For a split second, I saw it, the mask slipping. The flash of irritation in his eyes before he covered it with another smile. He kissed the top of my head and whispered, "Next week then." But I heard the blade under the velvet. That night I lay in bed beside him, the wire hidden in the drawer of my nightstand, waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for courage. My body was rigid with fear, but I knew Tom was right. If I didn't act, I wouldn't live long enough to regret it. I stared into the dark, listening to Jasper's steady breathing, and imagined Helen Grayson in her own bed, in her own last nights, wondering if the man she loved would be the one to end her life. By dawn, I knew I couldn't put it off anymore. The next morning, with trembling hands, I pinned the wire to my blouse. When Jasper came down for breakfast, cheerful as always, I poured his coffee, sat across from him, and forced myself to smile. Inside, I was screaming. "Jasper," I began softly, my voice almost breaking. "I found something while I was doing laundry. A little vial in your pocket, something ending in oxen." "What's it for?" His hand froze halfway to his cup, and in that stillness, I saw it, the shift from lover to predator, quick as the snap of a lock. the irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent my whole life avoiding conflict, always keeping the peace. And now my survival depended on starting the biggest confrontation of my life. That evening, Jasper made dinner for us, something he'd been doing more often lately. I watched him move around my kitchen, humming softly, seasoning the food as if he belonged there. But every motion made me wonder, had he already begun poisoning me? Was he slipping small doses into my coffee, into my wine, slowly weakening me for the final strike? Every bite of food tasted like ash. Every sip of wine felt like a gamble between life and death. But I forced myself to smile, to laugh, to act like a woman, head over heels, for her younger fiancé. When Jasper reached across the table, took my hand and whispered how happy I made him, how he couldn't wait to spend the rest of our lives together. I nearly bit through my tongue just to keep from screaming. After dinner, he suggested we take a walk to the creek. Just the two of us under the stars. Once that kind of gesture would have melted my heart. Now it felt like an invitation to my own execution. The creek was far isolated. No neighbors, no chance of anyone hearing me if I screamed. If he wanted to kill me tonight, it would be the perfect place. But saying no would raise suspicion. So I let him help me into my coat, his hand warm against my back, and we stepped into the cool evening air. The recording device Tom had given me was pinned beneath my blouse, pressing against my chest like a stone. As we walked hand in hand down the moonlit path, I tried to summon the courage to confront him. The world around us glowed silver and strange, the familiar woods now looking like something from a nightmare. By the time we reached the creek, my heart was pounding so loud, I was sure he could hear it. Jasper pulled me close, kissed me under the stars, whispered his love. And for a moment, I almost gave in. Even knowing what he'd done, some part of me still craved the illusion of love. Still wanted to believe his lies. But then I remembered Helen Grayson and the other women he had destroyed. Their ghosts seemed to hover around us, urging me not to falter. I couldn't let him add my name to his list. Standing by the creek, wrapped in his arms, I made the hardest decision of my 83 years. I was going to confront him, right there, under the stars, with no one to hear but the recorder hidden against my heart. I pulled back and looked into those dark eyes that had fooled me for so long. My voice was steadier than I expected, maybe because I'd spent a lifetime pretending. I've been having some health concerns, I told him gently, so I've been thinking of updating my will, just to have things in order. I watched his face carefully. At first, he looked genuinely concerned. He asked if I'd seen a doctor, even offered to drive me. He played the devoted fiancé so perfectly that for a split second, I almost believed him myself. But when I mentioned Samuel's old papers, when I hinted at documents with my name on them, ones I didn't remember signing, I saw it. Just for a heartbeat, his mask slipped. Beneath it, the predator stared back at me. He quickly covered, suggesting Samuel must have been preparing financial arrangements before his death. But his voice was tighter now, his words too careful. When I pressed him, asked if he knew about those papers, the silence stretched between us like a tightrope. And then Jasper changed. The gentle man was gone. In his place stood someone cold, calculating. "You're asking a lot of questions," he said quietly. For someone who should be thinking about our future together. There was a threat in his tone, subtle but unmistakable. I swallowed my fear and pushed further. "You know, I've been having strange dreams about women, older women, hurt by men they trusted." I let the words hang before I added as casually as I could. One of them was named Helen Grayson. The moment her name left my lips, Jasper went utterly still. The only sound around us was the creek bubbling low over the rocks and the thunder of my own heartbeat in my chest. Then Jasper asked, in a voice so quiet it was almost a whisper, how I knew that name. But there was nothing soft about his tone. It was sharp, dangerous. Every instinct I had screamed at me to run, but where could I go? My legs wouldn't carry me far, not anymore. So instead I stood my ground and told him the truth. That Margaret had come, that investigators were watching him, that I knew about the other women. With each word, I watched his face change the mask of tenderness, shattering the predator underneath, revealed in full. His hands shot out, gripping my arms so hard, I knew there would be bruises. His voice was low and poisonous as he told me I'd made a terrible mistake, that I should have kept quiet, being grateful for the so-called love he gave me. The way he said love, it was like spitting out something foul, but instead of fear, something else took hold of me. Rage. Pure, sharp rage. This man had invaded my home, my heart, my body. He'd used my grief like a weapon, my loneliness like bait. He'd made me believe I was cherished, when all along I was being hunted. I looked him dead in the eye and told him I knew. I knew everything about Helen, about the vial of poison, about the forged papers, about the investigators closing in. And with each word, I saw him unravel. His mask cracking, his control slipping. Then he laughed. A sound colder than the water in that creek, hollow and terrifying. He admitted it all. Said I was clever, just like Helen had been. But being clever wouldn't save me. No figuring it out had only sealed my fate. He told me he'd planned to make it look peaceful, like a natural death. But now he'd have to be more creative. What he didn't know was that every word, every sick confession was being recorded. If I survived this night, if I could get that recording into Tom Crawford's hands, Jasper would never hurt another woman again. But survival was slipping further out of reach with each breath. His grip tightened as he said we were going back to the house and that I was about to have a tragic accident. Maybe a fall down the stairs. Something believable. And if I resisted, he promised he could make my death last for hours. We walked through the moonlit yard, his hand like iron around my arm. My mind raced, searching for anything, any chance to fight back. And then I remembered Samuel's old hunting rifle, still hidden in the bedroom closet behind his winter coats, loaded, waiting. Hope faint but fierce sparked in my chest. If I could get to it before Jasper made his move, I might just have a chance. Beside me, Jasper kept talking his excitement, making him reckless. He bragged about the women he'd tricked, how easily they'd signed everything over. And then he described Helen's last moments. How she'd begged him to call for help as the poison stopped her heart. That was when the rage came boiling up so strong I could hardly see straight. That monster had preyed on women like me, widows vulnerable in our grief. He twisted our loneliness into a weapon, convincing us that what we felt was love, when it was really a trap. We stepped onto the porch. Jasper hesitated, probably deciding how best to stage my accident. That's when I made my move. I pretended to stumble, clutching my ankle and crying out in pain. The moment his grip loosened, I wrenched free and bolted for the door. My old legs moved faster than they had in years, adrenaline giving me strength I never knew I still possessed. Behind me, I heard his furious curses, his footsteps pounding closer. My fingers fumbled on the door handle, my breath ragged. I managed to shove it closed, but he was too strong, forcing his way in with his face twisted into pure rage. Gone was the charm, the smile, only the monster remained. I raced up the stairs, whispering desperate prayers that my heart wouldn't give out before I reached the bedroom, before I reached Samuel's rifle. Halfway up, Jasper grabbed at my nightgown. I kicked back blindly, my heel connecting with something soft. His howl of pain gave me just enough space to break free. The bedroom door slammed shut. My trembling hands managed to lock it, though I knew it wouldn't hold for long. I yanked open the closet, my fingers shaking too violently to grip the latch. Finally, I had the rifle in my hands. Its weight was familiar, almost comforting. The door splintered. Jasper burst through, wild-eyed and dangerous. And I was ready. I pulled the trigger. The gunshot thundered in the room. For a heartbeat, silence, smoke, ringing in my ears. But when it cleared, Jasper was still standing. The rifle had misfired. The look on his face, shock twisting into cruel satisfaction. He stepped toward me, knowing he had won, and then sirens. Faint at first, then growing louder. Relief surged, but Jasper's eyes told me he wouldn't wait for the police. He was going to end it before they arrived. That's when I heard it. A voice, Samuel's voice. Up here I cried in disbelief, but Jasper spun toward the sound. First, his face turning ashen, his lips mouthed one word. Daddy. Footsteps on the stairs. Heavy. Real. And then Samuel stood in the doorway, alive, breathing. My heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a miracle. It was something far worse. Samuel explained his death had been staged. He'd been working with the FBI building a sting against Jasper. Every tear I cried, every sleepless night, every second I believed I was a widow, had been a performance for him. My grief was part of his cover story. My marriage, my life was a lie. Jasper collapsed, begging forgiveness. But Samuel's face was stone cold. He told his son that watching him prey on me, the woman Samuel truly loved, or so I thought, was proof Jasper was beyond redemption. But then Samuel looked at me, and in his eyes, I didn't see love or regret. I saw calculation. He confessed that even our marriage had been nothing but strategy. He needed a wife who matched Jasper's type to bait the trap. Can you imagine years of shared life, The vows, the tenderness, all of it staged. When they dragged Jasper away in handcuffs, he turned back once. His eyes no longer threatened me. They pitied me. Pitied me for believing that anyone could love an old woman like me. When the house fell silent, Samuel gone with the agents, I sat alone in my rocking chair, surrounded by the wreckage of 2 lies, the love of a husband, the passion of his son. Both had left scars, but at 83 years old, I learned something. Real strength isn't in being loved. It's in surviving the lie. It's in breathing when your whole world has burned to ash. It's in standing alone when everyone you trusted has betrayed you. The heart can break twice by the same family and still keep beating. Betrayal has many faces, but so does survival. And survival is mine. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this: you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of love that doesn't come with conditions or ulterior motives. Don't let anyone make you feel grateful for crumbs when you deserve the whole feast. And now, let me ask you, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to know. Because sometimes the most important battles come when we think all the fighting is over. And if this is your first time here on Love and Tears, don't forget to hit subscribe. More stories are coming, stories of women who refuse to be victims, because growing old doesn't mean growing weak.